Description, in order to be effective, calls upon two mental qualities: observation and discrimination. Many descriptions depend, for their vividness, upon the accurate reproduction of details, others upon the judicious selection of salient, typical, or significant points. One cannot be too careful in the selection of adjectives for descriptions. Words are compounds which describe precisely and which convey exactly the right suggestions to the mind of the reader are essential. As an example, let us consider the following list of epithets applicable to a fountain taken from Richard Green Parker's admirable work on composition: crystal, gushing, rustling, silver, gently gliding, parting, pearly, weeping, bubbling, gargling, chiding, clear, grass-fringed, moss-fringed, pebble-paved, verdant, sacred, grass-margined, moss-margined, trickling, soft, dew-sprinkled, fast-flowing, delicate, delicious, clean, straggling, dancing, vaulting, deep embosomed, leaping, murmuring, muttering, whispering, prattling, twaddling, swelling, sweet rolling, gently flowing, rising, sparkling, flowing, frothy, dew distilling, dew born, exhaustless, inexhaustible, never decreasing, never falling, heaven born, earth born, deep divulging, drought dispelling, thirst allaying, refreshing, soul refreshing, earth refreshing, laving, lavish, plant nourishing. For the purpose of securing epithets at once accurate and fallacious, the young author should familiarize himself thoroughly with the general aspect and phenomena of nature, as well as with the ideas and associations which these things produce in the human mind. Descriptions may be of objects, of places, of animals, and of persons. The complete description of an object may be said to consist of the following elements: when, where, and how seen, when made or found, how affected by time, history and traditional associations, substance and manner of origin, size, shape, and appearance, analogies with similar objects, sensations produced by contemplating it, its purpose or function, its effects, the results of its existence. Descriptions of places must, of course, vary with the type of the place. Of natural scenery, the following elements are notable: how beheld, at dawn, noon, evening, or night, by starlight or moonlight. Natural features, flat or hilly, barren or thickly grown. Kind of vegetation, trees, mountains, and rivers. Works of man, cultivation, edifices, bridges, modifications of scenery produced by man. Inhabitants and other forms of animal life, local customs and traditions, sounds of water, forest, leaves, birds, barnyards, human beings, machinery, view, prospect on every side, and the place itself as seen from afar, analogies to other scenes, especially famous scenes, history and associations, sensations produced by contemplating it. Descriptions of animals may be analyzed thus: species and size, covering, parts, abode, characteristics and habits, food, utility or harmfulness, history and associations. Descriptions of persons can be infinitely varied. Sometimes a single felicitous touch brings out the whole type and character, as when the modern author Leonard Merrick hints at shabby gentility by mentioning the combination of a frock coat with the trousers of a tweed suit. Suggestion is very powerful in this field, especially when mental qualities are to be delineated. Treatment should vary with the author's object, whether to portray a mere personified idea or to give a quasi-photographic view, mental and physical, of some vividly living character. In a general description, the following elements may be found: appearance, stature, complexion, proportions, features, most conspicuous feature, expression, grace or ugliness, attire, nature, taste, quality, habits, attainments, graces or awkwardnesses, character, moral or intellectual, place in the community, notable special qualities. In considering the preceding synopsis, the reader must remember that they are only suggestions and not for literal use. The extent of any description is to be determined by its place in the composition, by taste and fitness. It should be added that in fiction description must not be carried to excess. A plethora of it leads to dullness, so that it must ever be balanced by a brisk flow of narration, which we're about to consider. Narration. The essential point of fictional narration is plot, which may be defined as a sequence of incidents designed to awaken the reader's interest and curiosity as to the result. Plots may be simple or designed to awaken the reader's interest and curiosity as to the result. Plots may be simple or complex, but suspense and climactic progress from one incident to another are essential. Every incident in a fictional work should have some bearing on the climax or denouement, and any denouement which is not the inevitable result of the preceding incidents is awkward and unliterary. No formal course in fiction writing can equal a close and observant perusal of the stories of Edgar Allan Poe or Ambrose Bierce. In these masterpieces, one may find that unbroken sequence and linkage of incident and result which mark the ideal tale. Observe how, in the fall of the House of Usher, each separate event foreshadows and leads up to the tremendous catastrophe and its hideous suggestion. Poe was an absolute masterpiece of the mechanics of his craft. Observe how Bierce can attain the most stirring denouements from a few simple happenings, denouements which develop purely from these preceding circumstances. In fictional narration, verisimilitude is absolutely essential. A story must be consistent and must contain no event glaringly removed from the usual order of things, unless that event is the main incident and is approached with the most careful preparation. In real life, odd and erratic things do occasionally happen, but they're out of place in an ordinary story, since fiction is a sort of idealization of the average. Development should be as lifelike as possible, and a weak, trickling conclusion should be assiduously avoided. The end of a story must be stronger rather than weaker than the beginning, since it is the end which contains the denouement or culmination, and which will leave the strongest impression upon the reader. It will not be amiss for the novice to write the last paragraph of his story first, once the synopsis of the plot has been carefully prepared, as it always should be. In this way, he will be able to concentrate his freshest mental vigor upon the most important part of his narrative, and if any changes be later found needful, they can easily be made. In no part of a narrative should a grand or emphatic thought or passage be followed by one of tame or prosaic quality. This is anticlimax, and exposes a writer to much ridicule. Note the absurd effect of the following couplet, which was, however, written by no less a person than Waller. Under the tropic is our language spoke, and part of Flanders hath received our yoke. Unity, mass, coherence. In developing a theme, whether descriptive or narrative, it is necessary that three structural qualities be present: unity, mass, and coherence. Unity is that principle whereby every part of a composition must have some bearing on the central theme. It is the principle which excludes all extraneous matter and demands that all threads converge toward the climax. Classical violations of unity may be found in the episodes of Homer and other epic poets of antiquity, as well as in the digressions of Fielding and other celebrated novelists. But no beginner should venture to emulate such liberties. Unity is the field we have lately noted and praised in Poe and Bierce. Mass is that principle which requires the more important parts of a composition to occupy correspondingly important places in the whole composition, the paragraph and the sentence. It is the law of taste which insists that emphasis be placed where emphasis is due, and is most strikingly embodied in the previously mentioned necessity for an emphatic ending. According to this law, the end of a composition is its most likely part, with the beginning next in importance. Coherence is that principle which groups related parts together and keeps unrelated parts removed from one another. It applies, like mass, to the whole composition, the paragraph or the sentence. It demands that kindred events be narrated without interruption, effect following cause in a steady flow. Forms of composition. Few writers succeed equally in all the various branches of literature. Each type of thought has its own particular form of expression. Based on natural appropriateness, and the average author tends to settle into that form which best fits its particular personality. Many, however, follow more than one form, and some writers change from one form to another as advancing years produce alterations in their mental processes or points of view. It is well in the interests of breadth and discipline for the beginner to exercise himself to some degree in every form of literary art. He may thus discover that which best fits his mind and develop hitherto unsuspected potentialities. We have so far surveyed only those simpler phases of writing which center in prose fiction and descriptive essays. Hereafter we hope to touch upon didactic, argumentative, and persuasive writing, to investigate to some extent the sources of rhetorical strength and elegance, and to consider a few major aspects of versification.